and welcome everybody to the city of Ghent. Let's have a quick introduction. This is Belgium's third largest city after Brussels and Antwerp. I've done a video on Antwerp already, so if you want to check that out, it is linked in the description below. Now Ghent is a university town, so lots of students live here. In fact, many people permanently move to Ghent after their studies are over. You can even hear the influence of people from West Flanders moving to Ghent in the Ghent dialect, which now has some of its typical sounds changed. So what can you do when you are in Ghent? Well, noticeably there are some good museums around. People wanting a taste of Flemish masters such as Rubens will be delighted by a visit to the Museum voor Schone Kunsten. If you are more into modern art, then the Smak is the place for you. And if you wanted to visit both of them, well, they are conveniently located right next to each other here in the museum district where we are walking now. The most attractive part of Ghent, for me though, is its historic city centre. So let's explore it on a walk together. Here we are walking up to the gorgeous St. Barbos Cathedral. It was built and expanded throughout the 14th to 16th century. As a Belgian, it's interesting to think about how old these buildings actually are, because they're still just a part of the city, and often we just pass them by and don't really take them in. A lot of the times my partner, who is not European, actually gives me a fresh new perspective on this. So I stop to admire, for example, some cool facades more often. Now you've probably already noticed that there's quite some bikes, but little to no cars around. This is because Ghent circulation laws changed in 2017 to prevent cars who don't have their destination in the city center from passing through here. This was to make the center more accessible for public transport, bikes, pedestrians, and cars too if they need to be there. Think of suppliers for stores, for example, or this guy who is on its way to some construction site. As a pedestrian who has experienced the before and after, I can tell you it definitely made a difference, and it feels a lot more tranquil walking around now. This tower is one of Belgium's belfries, which are listed as UNESCO heritage. Belfries or bell towers, usually constructed to show off the wealth and power of cities. Kortrijk also has one, as you can see in one of my other videos, also listed down below. walking up to the City Hall now. I have fond memories of this building as my best friend got married here. And it's a beautiful building all in itself. Just look at all this intricate detail. Now for Ghent's most polarizing building. Built in 2012, the City Pavilion was criticized for being too large and too modern for the historic city center, blocking some of the views to the older buildings. You hate it or you love it, or maybe you don't really care. I personally think it's a beautiful construction and it blends in surprisingly well with all the history around. Another church here, St. Nicholas's Church, and lots more cool architecture leading up to the Korenmarkt. Now the really cool thing about Belgian cities is that all these historic buildings are not only being preserved, but also still being used, so it never actually feels like you're just walking around a museum, but you're actually in a bustling city. This beauty, for example, houses a supermarket in its basement. Let's keep walking. It'll look like we're stalking this lady with the red bag for a while, but I swear I only noticed this when playing back the footage. We are looking out onto the Korenlee and the Graslee here, always full of people enjoying the sun when the weather is nice. Example of historic buildings still being used here, Tierenteen has been selling mustard in the same house since the 1860s. The tram and the tram tracks are another thing that you just can't imagine Ghent without. The tram is actually my favorite way to get from one end of the city to another. you weren't impressed yet, how about this? An entire actual medieval fortress in the middle of town. Just whoop, there it is. It's called the Gravensteen, the Castle of the Counts. I wholeheartedly recommend a visit to this 12th, that's right, 12th century building. Now, I hadn't visited this part of town before. As you can tell, it feels more residential than what we have seen up to now. This landmark is what gives this part of Ghent its name, Rabot. A rabot is a hydraulic engineering term, but over time the towers and later the whole area inherited the name. Let's warp to a more central location again, the Friday market, where yes, an outdoor market is still being held every Friday, a tradition dating back to the days of the Counts at Gravensteen, the 12th century. We're going to walk past De la Griet here. It is a cannon brought to Ghent in the 16th century to defend the city against the Spaniards. Reportedly, she was never actually fired though. Next up, we'll be entering what many describe as Ghent's most picturesque area, the Patershol. So just sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of the walk. Thank you so much for watching. Now please feel free to leave any feedback in the comments. If you want to discover more Belgian cities, do check out the linked playlist. Have a very good one, everybody.